Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming to our kickoff of our statewide budgets. We're delighted to have you here. I'm Kelly Holtz. I'm the Deputy Director of the Change Management Office for Fiscal. This presentation is on our website, fiscal, $.ca.gov. Under latest news, I think this morning when I checked, it was the second item. So we're going to open and tell you why you're here and a couple of changes that have happened on the project, and then we're going to jump right into what is this Hyperion budget piece that we're asking you to do, so you gain an understanding of why you're here and what the expectations are. We'll go over the system, and then we'll talk a little bit about the technical requirements and the training associated with it. And we'll have time at the end for questions and answers. We do not expect this session to go the full 2 hours, but it depends upon how many questions you have. We also ask that you go ahead and ask your question along the way. Just raise your hand and wait for a microphone so everyone can hear, as well as the people that are participating remotely. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our new governor appointee in the Fiscal Executive Partner position, Miriam Ingenito.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming today, and we are going to be talking, as Kelly said, about budgeting mostly today. But I wanted to start by touching on a few changes that you may have heard about or haven't heard about, and assure you that, I've been on the job, I think 6 weeks, 5 weeks, and one of the things that I have heard over and over and over again is communication. So we are definitely improving how we communicate with all of you, and my goal is to have no surprises for any of you, so that things that are coming, we're forecasting well in advance so that you can be ready. So today we're going to talk about budgeting. The Hyperion system has garnered enough support and confidence in our Department of Finance, and the folks that have used it to date, that we are moving up the rollout for all departments from 2017 into 2016. So July, all of the departments will be doing budgeting in Hyperion. We are bringing on a small number of departments and some of the funds in 16. It's just a handful of departments, about 7 departments and 3 funds. And then the other 2 changes that you need to be aware of are that the STO and SCO control functions will be moving from, will be rolling out in 17, and we will be adding an additional release. So we're going to move away from waves and go into releases, and that's a whole different presentation. But there will be some going in 17 and some in 18. So we'll have a small group in 16 rolling out, 17 and 18, and how we're going to divide you into those groups will be different as well, based on past experience. We will be sending out in January, we're going to be doing an analyze of all the departments, just going in, trying to get a little bit about each of you so that we can put you into groups of like departments, and not like by Health and Human Services or Environmental Protection, but like on you have a certain complexity in your funds or a certain complexity in your accounting. Are you heavily federally funded? Are you heavily special funded? So we'll put that together so that we can have staff that'll be working with each of those cohorts with more in-depth expertise in those issues that you will be having or could have in questions. And I thought there was one more thing. I only counted 3. Did I miss one? SCO, STO, budgets, and 16. I think that was it. So again, the Financial Information System for California, or Fiscal, is an unprecedented partnership between our wonderful partners with the Department of Finance, will be presenting today, the State Controller's Office, the Department of General Services, and the Treasurer's Office. So, and again, it's integrating all of those control functions into this one system. I want to do a shout out and a special thanks to our partners at the Department of Finance, because again, we prepared a budget, and all of you really, to help in that, but We prepared the governor's budget last year. We'll be preparing it again this year. And then in 16, you'll all be interacting in it. So Kristen Shelton and Veronica Chung-Ing and Terry, I can never say your last name, Tatoshin. It's like I look at it every time and I'm like, I can never say it. So anyhow, so I do want to say thank you for all of your work on this project and on Hyperion. So, and again, they'll go into more detail on this. But one of the big changes in the system will be, I just wanted to make sure that I'm not doing Matt's slides. I'll just keep talking all the way through. Is that you'll have the option to enter in data directly into Fiscal instead of the worksheets that you've always done and giving them to finance and then them adding it in, that you can be able to do it more expeditiously at home where you all are, or you still have the option to do these spreadsheets. I don't know if there's anything else. That's it. I'm going to pass it over to Matt Aguilar from the Department of Finance, who will walk you through the Hyperion, which is our budgeting side of the show. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So it's a pleasure to speak with you about the budget application today. So just some foundational items. I want you to be aware that obviously our state budget process is not changing. So all of the work that you're doing now, you'll continue to do in the new world. You'll just be using new tools to do your work. And so today I'm going to take you through what some of the screenshots look like in the system, just for your informational purposes. As you know, this is not a training session, so there's a lot of additional support and training available to help learn how to input the data specifically. So I just want to convey to all of you today what the concepts are and kind of how the system will work at the conceptual level. So the Hyperion application is our book of record. So any departments working in the system, obviously their data will be in the system. There are some departments that are still not in the system, so currently their information needs to be uploaded to the system. Pardon me. So any departments not working in the system, their data needs to be uploaded to get their data into the system. There are a few exempt and deferred departments, so their information would need to continue to be uploaded until they come on the system. There are some benefits of working in the system directly. Primarily, you can enter and validate. I don't know if I'm too close to that. You can enter and validate your own information directly, so you don't have to rely on finance to get reports out of the system to see if your data was input correctly. You also have the ability to run your own reports when you're working in the system. And there's also improved communication with finance, since this is the book of record. A lot of our, since most of the departments will be working in the system, a lot of the communications are related to how specifically to get your data into the Hyperion application. So that's a benefit of working in the system. There's also, the system also would prevent you from loading your information in invalid appropriations. So you still will work closely with the Department of Finance in the event that you have new appropriations that your department is proposing or working on. There's also increased transparency for your budget actions. So I think the best example is that as the legislature takes actions on your budget, since we would all be working in the same system, departments would have view access and be able to go in and look at reports on the public actions taken on your programs or budgets. And I think one other thing to note is that since we're going to have an integrated fiscal system, statewide we'll have one source of truth for our budget information, for our accounting data, and for our treasury information. So I think that's a benefit in terms of how you'll be able to use data to develop your program analyses or put forth any budget requests related to your departments. We would also encourage you to take advantage of learning the new tools, learning the new system, either through training that's offered or workshops. Obviously, the sooner that you learn the new tools, the better position you'll be in to do your work effectively as your department rolls onto the system. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the new terms in the system. As I said earlier, the budget process is not changing, so the system right now is built to enable us to perform core budget functionality. And what I mean by that is it allows us to develop the governor's budget, to record enactment changes through the legislative process to that budget, and also to make adjustments to enacted budgets. So that's kind of the core state budget functionality. At this point, the system is relatively young in its useful life, because this will likely be our system over the next 30 years, roughly. So at this point, it's centered around the core business for budgeting, but as the system matures, there will be additional enhancements that are available to help us improve efficiencies and effectiveness in our budget work. So these are some of the key terms in the system. The first is business unit, and that's more commonly right now your organization code. There's also a budget request, and in the new system, at a high level, the way you enter data in is you're going to identify your budget request or issue, and this is basically just a container for whatever the budget proposal is. So that container can cover a multitude of transactions that we need for budgeting. This can include baseline issues, workload adjustments. It can include new policy requests or BCPs. It can also do revenues, transfers, or loans, or anything on that side of the budget house. And so in the system, you're going to create the container, and that only takes a couple minutes to kind of go into a new issue, give it a title. Let's say it's a new budget request to add an enhancement to one of your existing programs. You might put that title in there and develop the container. Then you're going to go into the forms and make sure that your dimensions are correct. And dimensions, I think, is another term that you'll want to become familiar with. And this is essentially pointing the database to the right location for the relevant information that you want to load into the system. So this is, us people in budgeting, we know all about programs, we know about appropriations, we know about categories of spending, whether it's personal services, operating expenses, etc. So the various forms in the system allow you to populate your data consistent with your budget requests, like we do now in fiscal detail sheets or budget change requests. There's also something in the system which is issue codes. So these are various flags that you can put on items. So coupled with the various data reporting forms in the system and these issue flags, it gives us a robust amount of reporting capabilities in the system. So once you load your data in, we can pull summary reports, we can pull detailed reports from all different types of level from the data that's entered. And once the data is in there, so we do have some fixed financial reports that are available to you. There's also the capability to run ad hoc reports in an Excel-like functionality. So you would export the data from the database into an Excel-type tool and tell it which data you want to pull, and the system will pull that data for you. Okay, so this is the screen where a user would log into the application. And this is just basic Windows functionality. So when a user logs in, you have a toolbar, and you can log into the CalPlan application here, and that's the budget application. So very similar to functionality you're already aware of. Okay, now we're getting into some of the screenshots from the system, and these are specific forms that are located in the system in its current configuration. And as I mentioned earlier, so remember, you're gonna define your container. I don't have slides in the deck right now for setting up that container, but that, like I said, that's a fairly straightforward process. You create an issue, give it a title, set any flags that are relevant to that issue, and then you'll go into the data collection part of the system. So this screen here is what's called the BR Summary tab for expenditures. And this, looking at the system here, you'll notice that on the top of the screen there's various tabs that are available. So as you start working in the system, you'll get comfortable with seeing that and realizing what you're looking at. So there's various tabs across the top. There's BR Summary, Program Budget Measures, Workload Measures, Agenda Groups, Department Issue Codes, Request by Category, Non-ad Category, and Budgetary Expenditures. So this is just drill down capability here. In the screen that we're showing you right here is the BR Summary tab. And this shows you a roll-up of the data that had been entered into the other tabs related to a specific budget request. So if this was hypothetically a BCP, where you had created your container already and you went into these other tabs, which I'll be going through on additional screens, you would enter your data. You could come to this screen and it'll show you what your total spend is by fund. And you'll also note that there's several years of fiscal data related in the columns down at the bottom of the sheet. So we have fiscal data for past year, current year, budget year, all the way out through BY+4. So this next screenshot is from the BR Summary tab for revenue, and that's very similar, works the same way that the Expenditure Summary tab does. So this would just be a roll-up of your revenue information that you would be posting elsewhere in the system. And one other thing I want to point out, you'll notice up towards the top of the screen, there's kind of a grayed out area there. That's where your dimensions are. And that's very important in the system, that as you go into the database, you always want to look at those dimensions and make sure that you're lined up to the appropriate fields that you want to record your data in. So you'll get used to working with that as you work in the new system. Okay, this next screenshot is the Department Issue Codes tab. So again, you would go into this through data collection and then click on the Department Issue Codes tab. And again, you have your dimensions, and in this case, it shows the business unit you're working in, which is Department of Fair Employment and Housing. And then you could put some tags on this issue which kind of tells you a little bit about what type of budget request this is. So in this case, you have an issue status flag. So this you could set to, is this issue approved, denied, things of that nature. There's also a policy or workload flag. So if it's a new policy request for your program, then you'd flag that as a policy issue. Or if it's just a baseline or workload issue, then you'd tag it as workload. There's also a department technical flag, and that's just a yes or no field if whether this is just a technical cleanup type of an issue. And there's also flags for whether or not this particular request would require budget bill language or trailer bill language. So again, along with the coding of your budget request and the flags here at an issue level, this allows us to sort our data and generate the types of reports we need to do our business. So this next screen is an input screen for reporting your issue by categories. So the functionality works the same way as I've mentioned on the other screens, where you go in through the data collection tab, click on the request by category, and then in the slightly grayed out area, that's your dimension string. So that has the business unit, shows which reference item we're working in, the fund source, the entity, and then program description, and then whether or not there's any project tagged to this particular request. So once you have your dimensions set, then you could go down to the data entry parts on the bottom of the screen. And in this particular form, we have 3 different data entry tags, or tabs, excuse me. The first is past year, the middle one is current year, and then there's a BY+4 where all those years' data is available in that particular tab. And you'll notice down the left-hand side of the page, these are all the different categories of spend where you can record your transactions. That's whether it has personal services, dollars, OE&E, etc. So you would populate that information in the database here. And this next tab is a revenue screenshot. So this would be an example of a revenue transaction in the system. And again, that works the same way. Once you set up your type of request, you drill down into data collection, go into the revenue tab, make sure your dimensions are correct, and then go into the given year that you want to record your revenue data. And you'll notice that on the left side here now, instead of your spend categories, these are your revenue codes. So whether it's taxes, fees, interest, or whatnot, you just populate the data in the correct fields by year, and that's how you get your data in for revenues. And this next screen is a position summary tab, and this particular screen allows you to input your position requests by category, and that is whether they're permanent civil service, temporary civil service, exempt employees, or whatnot. And this is strictly a numbers field, so if you had hypothetically 10 permanent employees you're requesting and 2 exempts, you would just put those totals in the appropriate years that you're entering the data. And this is a more detailed position change request form. And that works very similar to the functionality I've described in the other screens, where you drill down, make sure your dimensions are correct, and then go in and enter the new positions that you'd be requesting at a job class level. So if you have hypothetically 5 analysts you want to create, you would select the job code for analyst and include that in your form there, and include the position start dates and end dates and which years the dollars are that would be populated associated with those positions. And it's important to note that this is just a data entry screen, so you're not going to have your salary range predefined in the system. And in a lot of cases we found that it's easier to just do some of the work outside the system and then just populate the correct dollar figures that you're proposing here. That takes a lot fewer steps in terms of getting the data into the system. So it's a more effective business process to just be aware of what your appropriate salary ranges are and populate the data directly. Okay, the next screenshot is of a loan request. So this is, again, another area where you could load data into the system. And it works similar to the other functionality. You go drill in through your data collection, make sure your dimensions are pointing to the right type of issue and string that you want to record the data to. Go in and record your loans, which, if it's loans to other funds or loans from other funds, you record it on those line items for the given years that are impacted. And this is a screenshot of loan repayment, and that works the same way as I've been describing in the others. So drill down, set your dimensions, and load your data at the appropriate level. And then this next screenshot's a revenue transfer. And again, that works the same way as far as the functionality. And so I think the good thing is you're probably getting a sense of how the system allows us to enter all of our transactions, and once we get familiar with the system, it'll be fairly easy to work with it to do our budget issues and get them in the system. So this is a screenshot of some of the reports that are available for departments. And again, once the data's in there, you could slice and dice your program and category information into various reports, summary or detailed reports. And this is just a selection of the types of reports that are available, but again, you can run ad hoc reports in the system. So this is through the financial reporting tool. That's one tool that we have for providing reports. There's also a business intelligence publisher tool, which has another set of reports that are available for departments. And this one, I think, has the same type of information you can run for various reports relative to the budget cycle at a detailed or summary level. And it also allows you to run some comparison reports. So if you want to look at governor's budget versus mayor revision or any other key milestones in the budget process, you can run reports to do that. So unless there's any questions for me at this time, I'll turn it back to Kelly. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. That was a lot of information. Are you sure you don't have any questions? If you think of it, just stop us, stop me. So Fiscal Hyperion is no different than any other web-based application in that there's certain configurations that are required to use the system. So we have an end user workstation configuration guide that you'll want to access and provide to your IT folks to make sure that all the workstations on for your end users are configured appropriately. There's something called Smart View, which is an Excel plugin that you'll need if you're going to opt to load your budget information through the Excel spreadsheet upload. So how many of you are department liaisons? Yeah, you've been helping us for a long time, right? We've asked for you to participate in surveys, answer questions for us, and most recently, you've been working on tasks to go live with the procurement piece this year, right? And anybody know the date? Little test? Yeah, December 9th, right? So thank you for that. So you're going to get some tasks for this 2016 budget statewide implementation. But the good news is it's not many, and the first one's already done. So check off, you came today. So the next one is directed to our super users. How many of you are super users? Good. Now, keep your hand up if you know how to access the existing training. Good. If your hands went down, please either shoot an email to the Change Management Office or talk to your department liaison. We want you to be participating in that existing training. We want you to be the people at Go Live that your departments can go to first before coming to the service center to make sure that you're getting the support you need. So this precursor training will help you prepare for going live. It's just going to give you more immediate understanding of what's being expected of you. And we want you to complete that precursor training by the end of January. Department liaisons, you're going to be getting that task for making sure that your end user workstations are configured appropriately. You're going to be getting it very soon. And then we want you by the latter part of January to confirm that everything's been configured appropriately. We are working very closely, as we've said, with Department of Finance on this implementation, and they are going to go ahead and give us their recommendation on who your users are and whether they believe you'll be using the system as uploading your budget through the Smart View and the Excel templates, or whether you'll be you're a better candidate to be entering your data directly into the system. You will have the opportunity to say, yes, I agree, or I don't, I need to make these adjustments. But this way, we're giving you not a blank piece of paper for you to try to figure out what we're asking. We're going to give it to you with what we think is the best fit for you, and you can just validate or make any adjustments that you need to. again, that'll be happening in January. We will be, then once we know who your end users are, we're going to be asking them to register for the end user training. We'll do that in the April-May time period, and then they get trained in the May-June time period. And then just before go live, these end users will get their credentials to access the system. And as I said, Department of Finance is partnered with us on this, so that they will be delivering some supplemental training after go live through about the September time period. So not a lot of tasks to get you there, but a big bang for the state to get you on. Any questions on those? So next steps, just what I said, precursor training and department liaisons. As soon as you get that task to work on making sure your workstations are configured appropriately, make sure you do that. The change management office exists for no other purpose but to serve you, to help you get on to Fiscal and to support you once you're on. So if you have any questions along the way, just ask us. And finance is very heavily invested in this, so if you have questions for them, make sure you let them know. We're here to support. Any questions for myself, Miriam, or Matt? Yes.
Will the 7A8 be handled outside the system?
Yes, they're telling me yes. Any more questions? Was the question how?
We're going to continue with the current process that's using an upload template. And I think it's just really a volume issue, and that it's easier to use templates to upload that information.
We'll continue the Excel spreadsheet.
The Excel
Yeah,
spreadsheet,
that's
it's not uploaded into the system.
okay. Using the Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, question over here.
When we can access or implement, put it in data in a Hyperion, can we, as a departmental, can we print our own report, or still need a finance to print report for us? Because in the training, they mentioned that.
Yeah, once you're working in the system, you'll be able to run your own departmental reports.
Thank you.
They could do some ad hoc stuff for smart people, but not design.
A question for you, Matt. On the drop-down for the positions, are the positions, the classifications, are they pre-populated, where you pick from a drop-down, or we enter them ourselves? You had said that salary ranges, we entered them ourselves.
Yeah, I believe the job codes are available in the system, so you will have a drop-down for some of these screens. And I think there's other fields that I showed on there also, like your programs and some other information related to your budgets will be preloaded in drop-downs.
Okay. And I have one other question. Are one of the canned reports that you had shown that were available, is it the equivalent of like a proof listing? We're working with our budget analyst right now to try to get a proof listing equivalent for all of the current year plus 4. Is that one of the canned reports that we can get access to?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Bill, do we have a question here?
Just, where are we looking in our spreadsheets? You know, we're sending our.
Oh, hang on.
There you go. We're working in our worksheets, so we send to our budget analyst. Is the system, in essence, if we're used to working in those spreadsheets where we have populated items and all that, is that going to change in general? Or, I mean, what I'm kind of seeing is that it's just going to be a technical, we're going to be working in a system versus an Excel spreadsheet. Is there going to be major differences outside of that, is my question.
I think the core budget functionality and business remains the same, so we're just using new tools to load that information. So,
I think the
good point to make is the templates basically match. I think a good point to make, and many of you probably saw that it looked really familiar, right? Because those tabs are tabs in those spreadsheets that you're using today, those templates, the screens, essentially mimic one another. That said, we are going through some small design changes, so there may be some shifting in terms of what those templates look like when we kick off next year's budget. But it's only going to make it streamlined and more simplified, not make it more complicated. So we continue through the evolution of the system to make improvements and enhancements so that the data entry gets simpler. And I think you'll find that, wow, this is really familiar to me, because it's essentially a mimic or a simulation of each of those forms within the application. And then you may find, especially for small departments, that I don't need to mess with the templates. I can just go put my data in directly because it's so simple. The data entry is really easy in the application. The real tough part for you has been that shift in terms of the greater level of detail, right? Kind of blowing it up by those categories of expenditures.
I know you said you're going to continue with the 7As on Excel and sending them back and forth. Is there any future plans to work the 7A process through Fiscal, getting the Schedule 8 and then, getting better work on that?
We're still in analysis on that, but we hope to do something more.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful just to point out, the original vision of the system was to integrate with the HR system, and the state was supposed to have a statewide HR system that did not materialize. So a lot of that HR data was going to be integrated into the budget and fiscal system. Since that didn't happen, that functionality kind of is put on the back burner for now. In the future, if and when we do have a statewide HR system, then we'll bring over that data, and some of these fields may be readily available in the budget application for your use.
I would say that. In terms of HR, because I know that this is a big workload for you, kind of managing and tracking positions, we're always looking for a way to simplify that process. So as I mentioned before, we're working on continuous improvements to the system. We have to take it in smaller chunks, right? Because we only have so many resources to dedicate toward that. At the same time, we're trying to build next year's budget. We are working very actively right now, but it's more than a year away, on trying to do something to better automate. Even if we don't get a statewide HR system, we're trying to work with our partners at the controllers to see how much we can get preloaded in the system for kind of department massaging, as occurs today when you start with your Schedule 8 and then do your Supplemental 8. And so we're moving in that direction. It's a long-term project. As Terry had mentioned, which most of you probably didn't hear, we're still in that analysis phase, and it's a secondary effort to kind of the broader effort which gets our core budget system implemented.
So should we just kind of assume that we'll be doing the hard copy, we'll be receiving hard copies and doing our own business process within until further notice?
Yeah, I think that the question was, should we assume we're going to continue kind of the current process until further notice? I would say yes, that's a safe assumption. Certainly this budget is occurring that way. Next budget is occurring that way. Those are two givens. So you've got at least 2 more years, and depending on how things roll out, how we're able to share information in this new age of technology, and how smoothly that process tests, because one of the problems or challenges we ran into is California's big, really big, and so we have to have a system that's designed to handle that load. Our positions add a lot of complexity, especially if you have a lot of behind-the-scenes calculations that make that a challenge for us, so there has to be some really robust testing to keep moving that direction.
Any other questions? All
right. As I said earlier, this presentation is available on our website, and it's much longer than what you saw. There's additional screenshots of reports for you to look at, sample reports and things. So go out there and take a look at it. There's also this page with additional resources. I will stick around, so will Miriam, Neeraj, Veronica, and Kristen if you want to chat with us and you have any questions. Thank you so much for coming, and remember, we're here to help you.